The first crack of gunfire didn't sound real at first. It was the kind of pop you'd mistake for a kid's firecracker, sharp but distant, until the second and third shots cut through the air and sent seagulls screaming into the sky. I was holding a plate stacked with ribs when the bullet chewed a splinter out of the picnic table beside me. People froze for a split second, half chewed food still in mouths, laughter dying in throats before the shouting began. I whipped my head toward the sound, and there she was, framed against the bright afternoon light like some villain stepping out of a bad TV drama. Karen, the HOA president with a grudge as thick as her file of bogus violation notices. Her eyes were wild, her stance firm, and in her hands, a shiny black pistol that looked terrifyingly real. "Get off HOA property," she barked, even though everyone here knew this wasn't her land. This lakefront lot had been in my family for 3 generations, long before her cookie-cutter subdivision was even a sketch on a developer's napkin. She'd been pestering us for months, demanding dock permits we didn't need, accusing us of polluting the water, even filing false noise complaints every time we held a family gathering. But now she had taken it to a level no one saw coming. I dropped the ribs and took a slow step forward, my hands in plain sight. "Karen, put the gun down. There are kids here," I said, my voice low and steady. I could see my niece huddled under the table, clutching her little brother's arm, her wide eyes fixed on the weapon. Karen's lips curled in that familiar smirk, the one that always meant she thought she'd won. "Your so-called family event is violating HOA safety codes. And I warned you next time, I'd make sure it stopped." That's when a voice from behind me spoke up. "Ma'am, is this the threat you reported?" The sound was deep, calm, and carried the weight of authority. I turned just as 2 black SUVs rolled up on the gravel drive, Homeland Security emblazoned in white on their sides. 4 agents stepped out, their tactical vests glinting in the sunlight. My stomach flipped not from fear, but from the memory of the call I'd made 3 hours earlier. See, Karen had filed yet another 911 report this morning, claiming we were harboring dangerous individuals on the property. That dangerous individual was my old friend Samir, a retired Coast Guard officer who happened to be grilling shrimp skewers at the time. Homeland Security had been looped in because she claimed it was a national security threat. I told them everything when they called for clarification about Karen's harassment, her obsession with our property, and her recent escalation. I hadn't expected them to show up in person. I sure hadn't expected them to pull in just as she was firing a gun. The lead agent, a tall man with sun-creased skin and eyes that didn't miss a thing, stepped between me and Karen. "Ma'am, you understand discharging a firearm toward civilians is a federal offense, right?" His tone was even, but the weight of his words was undeniable. Karen's face twitched, the smirk faltering for the first time. She lowered the gun just a fraction, muttering something about protecting community safety. "Community safety?" Another agent scoffed. "From what potato salad and country music?" His partner was already motioning for a county sheriff's cruiser that had just turned onto the drive, lights flashing. The rest of the guests, though still rattled, began to gather behind me. You could feel the tide turning, that collective realization that Karen had finally gone too far so far there was no talking her way out of it. Samir stepped forward, calm as ever. "Agent, I can provide you with the footage," he said, holding up his phone. He'd been recording from the moment she appeared on the dock. Every shot, every word, captured in crisp detail. Karen's eyes widened, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked truly nervous. The lead agent didn't even glance at the screen before nodding to his team. "Secure the weapon. Detain her for questioning." The words hung in the air like the final nail in a coffin. Karen sputtered, tried to lunge back toward her car, but 2 agents had her restrained in seconds. The gun clattered to the ground, and the lake breeze carried the sharp tang of gunpowder away from the picnic. And here's where it got even stranger. One of the agents turned to me and said quietly, "We've had multiple complaints about this woman from other neighborhoods, harassment, false emergency calls, even trespassing. You may have just helped us close more than one case today." I felt my chest tighten not from fear, but from relief. This wasn't just about our barbecue anymore. This was bigger. Much bigger. Karen was still shouting as they walked her toward the waiting cruiser, her voice breaking into shrill, desperate notes. This is HOA jurisdiction. You can't arrest me. They're the criminals. They're the threat. The words sounded weaker the more she repeated them, like even she could hear how hollow they were. The Homeland security agent didn't flinch. Ma'am, you fired live rounds at unarmed civilians. That's attempted assault with a deadly weapon. HOA rules don't override federal law. Behind me, someone snorted, and a ripple of low laughter moved through the crowd. It wasn't cruel, it was the kind of release that comes after months of tension. The realization that the bully who'd ruled through fear was finally being dragged out into the light. My Uncle Hank, who'd spent the last decade fixing up this property with his own hands, crossed his arms and muttered just loud enough for me to hear. Took Homeland Security to do what the sheriff wouldn't. As they loaded Karen into the back of the cruiser, her eyes darted wildly, searching for someone to side with her. But nobody moved. Even her so-called HOA board allies, who had come to the lake with her earlier that day, were suddenly quiet, their folded arms now hiding nervous fidgets. One of them, a wiry man named Doug, who had delivered more than one bogus violation notice to our mailbox, took a step back like he wanted to melt into the crowd. The sheriff finally approached me, tipping his hat with a grim expression. We'll be reviewing all the evidence, but it's clear she crossed the line here. You'll have the chance to give a full statement. I nodded, still feeling the echo of adrenaline in my hands. And then came the twist I didn't see coming. As the agents began packing up, one of them pulled me aside. You might want to brace yourself, he said. We ran a quick preliminary check while en route your HOA's been misappropriating community funds for over a year. Karen's not just facing weapons charges. There's fraud too. And if that pans out, the entire board's going to be under federal investigation. My jaw dropped. Suddenly, the months of petty fines, weird bylaws, and aggressive enforcement made sense. It hadn't just been about control, it had been about covering up something bigger. Samir stepped up beside me, clapping a hand on my shoulder. Told you she'd trip over her own ego eventually, he said with a small grin. I couldn't help but smile back, even though part of me still trembled from the reality of how close things had come to disaster. If the agents had arrived a minute later, if the kids had been in the line of fire, I shoved that thought away before it could grow roots. As the SUVs pulled out and the sheriff's cruiser took Karen down the dirt road, the sun dipped lower over the water, casting a warm gold over the lake's surface. People started picking up fallen plates, righting overturned chairs, and checking on the little ones. Slowly, laughter began to return, not the forced, brittle kind from earlier, but genuine. We were safe now, and Karen's reign of intimidation had ended in full daylight for everyone to see. I looked over at the dock where she had stood moments earlier, gun in hand, and felt the weight lift off my chest. The same thought kept circling in my head. She'd built her entire sense of power on the idea that no one would ever stand up to her. But today she found out she was wrong. And maybe, just maybe, this was the moment our whole community stopped being afraid. Now I want to hear what you think. Was this justice, or did it go too far?